This is ColleidoCast. Fuck it. I'm too stoned. I'm too stoned to do it right now. I gotta record it another day. Bye. Alright, I'm back. I'm not stoned at all. There's the Warren Whiskey. No, this isn't Warren. This is ColleidoCast episode. Official first episode. Oh, shit. Get your fucking popcorn. Cut. That easy. That easy.
And if you think that man's professional, as you can see, he's not even at his desk. Okay, I'm gonna undeafen myself now that so that way you can hear me. Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to ColleidoCast, boys and girls, where we talk about anything from 80s nostalgic treasures to modern day AAA dumpster fires, usually movies, pretty much always movies. As always, I'm your host, Mr. JT, and with me, as always, is Mr. War. How you doing, Mr. War?
I'm feeling great. Excited to be here for the first official episode of ColleidoCast.
With our first MS Paint banner, looks great. Looks great.
It does look great.
So yeah, today we're going to be talking about probably one of my favorite movies, to be honest. I really like watching it a second time a couple days ago. Yeah, it's a freaking solid one. So this is a NightCrawler, not the mutant, but the guy with the camera. You know, there's people called NightCrawlers, and they get footage for.
I actually don't know if that's still a common phrase. Like, a part of this movie feels like it's LA in the 80s, but it's definitely more recent than the 80s. So maybe I don't know how ubiquitous the phrase NightCrawler is, because everybody that I've ever talked to thinks it's about the mutant from X-Men.
Well, so the marketing campaign for this movie, from what I remember, was literally just like a 5-second or something little clip, like right at the beginning of a YouTube video. Like from what I saw, I don't really watch TV, but even because back then I was working, so if there was a commercial, I would have seen it, I think, on TV. And the little 5-second clip was literally just like the logo, and it just went, "Watch NightCrawler in theaters," blah blah blah, and that was it. And I was like, "What the heck is this?" And I went and looked it up, and sure enough, it had nothing to do with the Blue Mutant NightCrawler.
I feel like that might have been like 90% of the people going to see it in theaters was comic book nerds thinking they were seeing a Marvel movie.
Those are some
but no, it's
dumb people.
It's actually this movie is very much a character study. I would compare it honestly to Joker. I think Joker is the only other.
Yeah.
I mean, Jake Gylenhaal. Like, every scene revolves around Jake Gylenhaal. It's got a lot of the Joker feeling, where he spends time alone in his apartment just doing stuff.
Right, yeah.
That may feel weird. It doesn't go as far as the Joker. You know, he's not like dancing around his apartment, but that is, and they're both, you know, the focus is a character that you could say has some sort of mental health issue. I don't know if you would say it's mental illness, but Jake Gyllenhaal in this movie is definitely a psychopath.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think they kind of established that probably in the first or second scene. So like the first thing you see this guy doing is he's cutting up chain link fence to put in the back of his car and sell it, because right now, from what the audience can understand anyway, he's just trying to find like any way he can to just make money. You know,
he's scrapping. Yeah.
Yeah, and he goes to some like construction site, some foreman, and he's like, "Hey, I got like 100 pounds of this and 100 pounds of that."
Let's go back. You're in the second scene now. You're in the second scene already.
Oh,
the first scene is where he is stealing chain link fence, and he is approached by a security guard, who the security guard has a very fancy watch. And this is actually, I think, the weakest scene in the movie. I don't think it tracks well for Jake Gyllenhaal's character, Lou Bloom. And this is the opposite of the opening scenes in both Howl's Moving Castle and V for Vendetta. two scenes that we have discussed previously. I don't think I would call Lou Bloom an anti-villain, but he's definitely the main character, and he's the antagonist, really. He's the bad guy, plain and simple. And again, audiences are stupid. They don't know whether or not they should be rooting for Jake Gyllenhaal. So you have to have this over-the-top, comically evil scene in which he attacks a security guard, which, most people think of a security guard, okay, he's just there, he's doing his job. He's not even part of the police, so you can't say he's like this institutionalized system, which, libertarians would have issue with, lots of the liberals have issues with. He is just a security guard, he's a private security guard, checking out a guy committing a crime.
Yeah.
And Jake Gyllenhaal attacks him. I think it's sort of silly to think that he overpowers him, because a security guard would be trained, and Jake Gyllenhaal, as you mentioned, looks very skinny and scrawny in this movie.
Well, I will say this. Let's be honest. I've known plenty of security guards in my day, and they're not all trained. Most of them aren't trained, in fact.
True, a lot of them are fat and overweight. This guy does look imposing. He looked bigger than Jake Gyllenhaal in the scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, then we cut to the recycling plant or whatever you call that place. I think they should have cut out the part where he attacks the security guard. I think just showing up with a bunch of obviously stolen metal goods would be enough to paint him as the bad guy.
Or at least just have him, because he looks at the watch, and then he does like this floppy arm punch thing, and then
it doesn't even look like a real fight. He just grapples with this guy, and there's a 1 second of struggling, and then the next scene it cuts. Jake Gyllenhaal's wearing the nice watch.
And I'll say this: I think after revisiting that scene right now, I think I do agree with you. That probably is the worst scene in the movie.
And I think a better scene that really shows what his character's about is his next act, where he's sitting by a palm tree, because this is Los Angeles, and he sees a biker lock up an expensive bike, and then in the next scene he is with the bike in a pawn shop, and he's just lying out his ass, making up all these stories on the fly about this bike to sell it and hawk it for money. And I think that better illustrates his character, because he succeeds through lies and manipulation, not necessarily through overpowering somebody with physical force.
I guess since we're still here at the beginning, though, one of the first note I think I took was cinematography and lighting just perfectly catch the atmosphere and the general attitude of the scene in the city,
oh sure, I mean it's Hollywood takes place Hollywood is LA essentially, I think, right? I don't know, maybe I'm an idiot.
I'm pretty sure they're in the same place.
I watched this video essay recently called by this YouTube channel called Now You See It, and it was about how movies are always about movies, and this totally fits that, where it's all about producing content. It takes place in LA. It is clearly, whoever wrote and directed this, I guess I should have committed that to memory. They know LA, obviously.
It's Dan Gilroy.
It's a great depiction of the city. And like you were saying, the lighting, there's a scene which takes place at night, and it's really the beginning of the climax of the movie. And I hadn't seen this movie in a few years, and my memory of that scene was it having taken place in broad daylight, because the lighting was so perfect. You could make out the entire scene, and it's a great scene. We're definitely going to talk about it later. But yeah, sure. The lighting, the cinematography in this film is excellent and not to be overlooked. And a lot of the scenes do take place at night, and you compare it to what is, I think, objectively the worst all-time night scene in any movie. I mean, admittedly, there's tons of awful, blurry black scenes that you can't tell, but in a mainstream, multi-million-dollar budget, the final season of Game of Thrones, The Longest Night, where the entire battle takes place at night, and you can't even tell the characters apart. It's a fucking travesty, and this is the opposite. They should have hired this guy to do the cinematography for The Longest Night. Would have saved that episode.
I'll throw one more in there actually, and it's a whole movie's worth basically. Might make some enemies with this one, but Batman Begins. I hated every single fight scene in that movie because it was just like there was choreography, but they just put the camera like right in front of where the fist was hitting stuff, and so you're just seeing things hitting other things in total darkness. It was like the most boring, nonsensical.
I don't remember
action.
Batman Begins to that level of detail, but I'm with you. I hate Batman Begins. I think it's one of the worst movies ever.
Yeah. It's
ever.
Not great. It's not great.
And I love, the Scarecrow is even like my favorite Batman supervillain, except for maybe Mr. Freeze. He's obviously pretty cool, but he's like Scarecrow is like one of like the best cinematic character.
Yeah. He's very background, yeah.
But yeah, so Lou steals this shit, and the next scene is when he is at the scrapyard trying to sell it, and he tries to apply for a job. And even before he applies for the job, or sort of he tries to give a pitch. He tries to sell himself. He's not really applying for a job, but we see him engage in what is a theme throughout this movie, and that would be negotiation. He enters into negotiation with the scrapyard, trying to get various rates for various materials, copper, chain link fence. And throughout this entire movie, he is constantly negotiating with folks.
It's yeah, I didn't really make that connection until you just brought that up, because that is kind of like his main way of manipulating people and getting what he wants is lying, and
he's a very good negotiator.
Yeah, he's a very fast learner, as he likes to say.
He also is a fast learner, as he himself states, which many psychopaths are highly intelligent. I don't think that's the majority of them. That might be a bit of a myth, but there's certainly no reason to think that one would be stupid.
Right. Yeah. So from this scene, I do believe we go from here to he's driving home, and he sees like this wreck on the side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
He sees this guy, like he parks to check out, and he sees this guy just rush in this van. And there's a bunch of cameras and stuff in the van. He rushes out of the van. And he's got this camera, and he's just like getting all up in that scene. And this is the night crawling part of the movie.
The Nightcrawler life. Yeah, he sees that, and he gets a taste of it. And this scene had great sound design. The volume, there's the car wreck, there's the police sirens and the ambulances and the fire trucks come. The guys are yelling. The Nightcrawler comes up, and the ambient sound just keeps rising and rising, and it's so chaotic, and it really sells this scene. And I don't know next we see is when he steals the bike, and he ends up trading it for his own video camera.
Right.
And he's obviously terrible. He tries to get video footage. He doesn't know what he's doing. He makes some enemies quickly with the police.
I think when I was watching it, that was kind of the first thing I was thinking, is like, wow, this is like the most obnoxious person in the world. But like we keep saying, he is some kind of a psychopath. He's got some kind of inner workings. And I think honestly what he was doing was, I think he was just diving in and figuring it out. Mm-hmm. And I think like really intentionally being obnoxious and getting around people so that way he could learn more about.
He was emulating at that point what he had seen.
Pretty much.
Which wasn't much, and
There's this one
on the
guy,
matter.
Sorry,
Go on.
Just real quick. There's this one guy who shows up sort of like at the tail end of his little escapade here, where he's just figuring stuff out, and he gets on his phone. He's negotiating prices with the local news. And that sort of, he's like tailing him, like he's like right behind him the whole time, and dude doesn't even know he's behind him until he turns around, and like he does, he just keeps asking questions, and guy tells him to screw off, and you know, that's kind of the first half of this movie.
That is the main competition. Did I write down his name? Joe Loader is that man's name. He is the established Nightcrawler. I think, was he even the one that he saw in the beginning scene, or was that somebody different?
that was a different guy.
Was that the guy that works with Joe Loader?
Yeah, I think he works with him. Yeah, they're part of the same team. They have like they're working.
It's a two-man. They had a two-man team. You know what? What I was going to say is back on the matter of him being a psychopath. Lou Bloom uses people as tools.
Yeah, they're just pawns.
They are all tools by which he achieves his means, and he's very charming. He's very outgoing. He greets people, and the way he speaks in what I was trying to think of how to phrase this. It sounds like I want to call it corporate talk. He speaks in corporate talk.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that.
Like every word he says sounds like it would be coming from upper management in a meeting, or you'd hear it on a sales pitch or like an ad on television. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I wish I had some of his lines memorized, but he's like, I have
a couple.
But. You do read us some of these lines.
It's stuff later on, like in the early parts. He's pretty much just trying to figure things out, but he speaks very like matter of factly, and his mind is so, he's just into figuring out what this thing is that he's trying to create, and figuring out the best ways to make that happen. And pretty early on, I guess this is kind of one of the lines. He interviews this guy. I guess he puts an ad in the paper or something, and it's this guy named Rick. He's really down on his luck. Can't keep a job to save his life. And you can tell by the way he's acting, he doesn't really want to say everything about himself.
Sure.
And there's a part where Lou is like asking his his work background, and he's like, I don't know, a week here, a week there, just odds and ends, trying to figure stuff out. He's like, he just looks at him like dead in the eyes, and he goes, doing tricks? He's like, I'm straight. He's like, plenty of straight guys do tricks. They just blow right through that. Through that.
I didn't know what to make of that, but yeah, he like during the interview, he's like, I'm looking for somebody who has the motivation and the wherewithal to succeed in this ever-changing corporate landscape. Stuff like the way he speaks. And something else about that scene, Rick introduces himself as Rick, and in the very next line, Jake Gyllenhaal refers to him as Richard. Literally the next line. And that's the only time the name Richard is used in the entire movie. He goes by Rick and is called Rick in every other scene. And I don't know what that was about. He's very professional. He once chastises Rick for swearing in front of his employer. But it's just like, he is just locked into this corporate professional frame of mind, and he doesn't see Rick as a person who, you'd give a nickname to. He immediately addresses him as Richard.
Well, in that same interview, to kind of double down on what you just said, he tries to hire him on as an intern for free,
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, dude, I gotta get paid something. And without breaking character or breaking this facade that he has, he just looks at him. He gives this smile. He's been smiling throughout the whole interview. Basically, he's very calm and enthusiastic. And he's like, you know what? How about this? $30 a night. And that was it. That's all it took. Because
all it took.
Just a little put. And throughout the movie, this is what he does. He has these sort of little pushes in these negotiations, which again, I didn't even realize that was like his main thing until you brought it up. But yeah, that's really interesting, to be honest. But yeah, I think from there, don't we go to the first actual job where Rick spends most of the movie in the passenger seat of whatever car it is that they're driving. There's two cars.
Being a fuck up. He's generally being a fuck up too.
Okay, to be fair, he's doing his best with a guy driving at like 40 over the speed limit or whatever. Which you know, I guess I'll address this real quick, and maybe this is sort of like a suspend your disbelief kind of thing. But there was many times where I'm watching this man drive, and he's a very good driver somehow. I don't know how he got that good, but I'm sitting here watching this. I'm like, how are they not getting chased by the police right now? Is LA just that loose?
I thought about it. I mean, it is night. It is like 3 a.m. in the middle of Los Angeles, shitty areas. Who knows? But
my theory on it is maybe because they're heading to the same thing that the cops are. Maybe the cops are more worried about getting to that accident or whatever it is.
It's even more egregious when he's driving the bright red sports car, which is statistically more likely to be pulled over. And speaking of statistics, that's something else that Lou does all the time. He's constantly citing numbers and statistics, and he talks about reading a lot of stuff online. So he just has this memory. I remember at one point he said this is when he's arguing with Rick. I think during like one of the first scenes when he misses the turnoff.
5 blocks.
And he says, studies show that the number one indicator of success in any relationship is communication. And he goes into these spiels, and they always sound maybe a reason I am calling this corporate talk is because the way he speaks is so impersonal.
Yes. Yeah.
It doesn't take into account any of the people or the context of these people's lives. It's always, from a very broad corporate perspective, where you've got these studies where, any study is always going to ignore outlying data or any sort of deviant, from your curve, the extremes.
Yeah.
And I mean, really, it does work for him though. He gets pretty far in this movie.
Well, I mean, if you consider the end of the movie, you can only assume how far he got, That's what's so interesting. So basically the next few scenes are just failing a few times. It's not like fail after fail after, but it's like a handful of times. They're trying to figure out how to work as a team. And he's basically at some point, because Rick is freaking out. He's like, "Okay, you were driving way too fast. I need you to slow down, stop rushing me." Which is funny because during that very same speech, he was like, don't complain at me, give me a solution. And and that's one thing I was actually going to bring up as well. Is like he was obviously frustrated. Lou was. There's only one time that you see him genuinely angry in this movie, and he doesn't let anybody else see it. And I'm pretty sure that's on purpose. Every other time he shows frustration. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
But he slams the mirror and it breaks.
He has, I wouldn't even call this a low point. I would say he hits a little bit of a wall, which is the competition.
He's late. He misses a scoop, and this is right after he sells himself to Nina, the nighttime news. I guess she's the production lead.
Yeah.
And he basically. I don't want to say he blackmails her into having sex with him. That's pretty much what he does.
Well, back up a little bit. So he meets. Eventually, they do get some footage, and I forget exactly what it was. I think it was just like really close-up footage of a shooting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's where he breaks into the home, and I sort of had written down.
No. But before that, there's an Asian guy who gets shot by someone else, and you see him.
He's right up in it. Yeah, he just ignores all the social norms and just like rushes into this paramedic scene and gets a close up of this this guy who was shot while picking up drugs for his dying wife or something.
That's right. Yeah. That's how he establishes his relationship with whatever the news channel, I forget, Channel 24 News or whatever, and that's when him and Nina start talking. He does invite her on a date later, and on the date, he, like you said, he it's not so much blackmail as it is. He doesn't have dirt on her. He's basically just saying, "I know everything about you," I
He
can stop
does.
delivering footage. I know you need me, this and that. Basically, yeah, he kind of is selling himself to her in a way. He's basically saying,
And
hey, sleep with me or else I'm just going to stop giving you footage. There's other news places who can take this footage. And
yeah, and that. I really don't know 100% his motivations for doing that.
he just wanted someone
Um,
to do
I
sex
guess.
stuff with.
Now, I don't want to say Nina is all that innocent either, because she's
Oh
pretty.
no.
Excuse me. She's very unscrupulous, especially with her willingness to air very questionable material. And of course, she does sleep with Lou for her own career. You could. I mean, I don't want to. I don't want to get Me Too'd here,
It
but
flips the
she
whole
is.
Me Too thing on its head, to be
She's
honest.
very willing to sleep her way into a better career standing. It's not like she's sleeping her way to the top, but she's certainly not innocent throughout this movie. And then back to Lou. Really, I think one of his bigger pieces is when he sneaks into that house where there was a shooting.
That's the get of the movie.
That was the
Yeah.
start. That was probably the start of the second act, really, because this is
It is.
you see a slow progression, and I'm reminded of. I've never read this book, but I've heard Jordan Peterson speak about it a lot. I think it's called
The
Ordinary
Bible?
Men, and no, it's about how inch by inch, the Nazis took regular people and got them to commit horrible, heinous war crimes, and because.
Okay.
Lou starts out with he just breaks into this house to get some footage, and then it escalates where he comes across a car wreck and he literally he drags the body to get better framing of the shot because he's been studying the composition of how you film a shot and lighting and
That's right before the house, right? Same night and everything, I'm pretty sure.
that might be later. Yeah.
But
Breaking in, he breaks in, then he moves the body, and then he cuts the brakes of his competition. That's really the first majorly illegal thing that he does.
yeah, that's kind of. I don't want to say that's
I mean,
like the
that's
start,
attempted murder.
but I mean, he's been breaking laws from literally the
Ah,
first
sure,
scene. So,
sure, he
I
does.
mean,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
this is like
that's where it begins to be more extreme.
right,
I would say.
right. This is when you really see what he's capable of when he feels pushed to back against the wall kind of stuff. I don't think that guy dies. They never really tell you, but yeah.
I think that guy was already dead. He literally dragged his limp body across the street.
Oh no, the mayhem dude, the competition.
Oh, yeah.
There's that scene where he goes up because he cut his brakes, he crashed into the pole, whatever, and Rick's with him, and he goes up and he has the camera and he's like, just doing his thing, and you know why he's doing it. The viewer knows why because he hates this guy. And Rick's like, "Hey, what are you doing? That's one of us. You can't be doing that." He's like, "Nope, not anymore. He's just a sale, Rick."
Just a sale. Yeah,
just a
again,
sale.
people are just tools and material for Lou. And you know what? I gotta say, Lou Bloom. I don't know if this is a specific reference, but his last name Bloom has to do, somewhat with the visual arts.
Potentially, I could see that.
Potentially, yeah. I was trying. I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading into that too much.
Or maybe
Lou Bloom.
or maybe a blooming career.
A blooming
How about
career.
that?
That's. I mean, his career does bloom. Let's see, where are we missing here? But back to him scoring the date in itself is a negotiation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And that whole date is negotiating.
Yeah, that was one. Again, at the date, he negotiates his way into that, and to sort of back up to what you said here about at least Nina. There's a lot of times, especially late, like especially after this scene, she becomes very vindictive and sort of. I don't know.
Does she?
Yeah, because she's sleeping with a guy she doesn't want to sleep with. She hates him. But later on, it almost it pretty much turns into like Stockholm syndrome. That's something that I noticed. I'd say probably because it was after he got the footage of the house, which we haven't really talked about yet. But yeah, he gets this footage from the house, shows it to her. You know, they air it, and he starts negotiating again. And he's talking like, okay, I want $50,000 or $100,000 or something.
Yeah, this is really the one of the most intense scenes of the movie, and it's just Jake Gyllenhaal giving a list of demands to this woman.
Yep, and she just sits there and okay.
I mean, she works with them. Yeah, it's a brutal scene, and you really get a feel for, okay, this man, he knows what he wants, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to get there. He's like, I want this amount of money. He's like, we're going to save time. He's like, you need to realize that when I ask for a number, I arrived at that number after very serious thought and consideration.
Yep.
And we're going to save both our time by not negotiating. You're going to accept it. He's like, I'm going to meet the next level. I'm going to be introduced to the anchors. I'm going to be introduced to these people, or this and that. I want my film to be credited. You're going to refer to it as video production news, a news gathering agency or something. He's like, that's how it's going to be said. That's how it's going to be read. Yeah, it's a great scene. And then it ends with him demanding that when they're alone in her apartment and he tells her to do something, that she'd better do it. And that's when you sort of get that's when you sort of like get the scary vibes off of him, where it's like, okay, like imagine how scary this guy seems like. And it's just with his tone of voice, it's with his eyes, he blinks. One of the things that he has stated about this character is that he tried to blink as little as possible during these scenes. And it's like, okay, like this is him acting like this in public. Like, what is he like alone at home in the bedroom when he is, again, this woman, it would be nothing more than a tool to him to gain sexual pleasure as well. Like, God only knows, like, the demands and his reactions when his demands are not met. It leaves that to the audience to ponder. There's never the scene,
which I love,
where it's great. It's a fantastic storytelling. It's that scene. It's a great scene. Like, the fact that he wasn't nominated for Best Actor in this scene is a travesty.
Yeah, I one thing about that scene as well that really added to it, and this is just testament, I guess, to how good an actor Gyllenhaal is. For me personally, I'm just speaking from my own experience here. I've only seen a handful of his movies. Unfortunately, that includes Prince of Persia. But in this particular movie, man, like, this might be one of the best roles I've ever seen. He's a different person. He's not Jake Gyllenhaal in this movie. And I guess to throw it back to Joker, kind of the same thing there. Joaquin.
Sure, Phoenix, I mean that's acting. These guys are artists, Yeah,
they're great. Like, he's absolutely great. And one of the things that I really noticed in that scene was, as he's making these demands, he's pointing his finger, and he's like with every demand,
he's walking forward,
step, and he gets to be like the focus of the camera. He's like that big on screen, and I was like, wow, man, that is, what a great scene. It's so well shot, it's so well played through, and she literally, all she had to do was sit there and let him do his thing. That's the funny part. You see the back of her head the whole time. Easiest scene she probably ever had to do in her life.
Sure.
But yeah, I cannot talk about how much I love at least him in this movie. I mean, Rick is I think the guy they got for Rick is pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
Nina, a lot of the actors are great, but he easily carries this movie.
Absolutely. This movie is a Jake Gyllenhaal vehicle, I would call it.
100%.
And God, it's a shame. It's a shame that he wasn't nominated, or it's a shame, I think, that this movie isn't more well known. At least in my personal experience, I've met very few people who have seen this film.
Well, I'm actually looking at it here. It was nominated. I don't know if it
was
won,
it?
Though.
What was it nominated for?
Let's see here. Several awards. Several awards.
But
Critics' Choice Awards, Golden Globe, Screen Actors Guild. It's not giving like Best Actor.
Well, he didn't win anything, which is bullshit.
I agree with
and
that.
This movie is very. very poorly known, and that's a shame.
I wonder if it has to do with the marketing, but at the same time, the kind of movie it is, and I'll just be fair, the kind of culture we live in, the MCU culture,
Mm-hmm.
the Disney culture. Even back then, it was pretty prevalent in 2014. Actually, it was about to hit its peak because 2015 was like some of the bigger superhero movies. Anyway, yeah, I kind of wonder if it had been marketed better. Would it have?
How do you market a film like this? I mean, it's
I
a
don't
drama.
know.
It's an R-rated drama.
Yeah, like they had trailers, online, and again they did that little thing that I talked about earlier. But I don't know. I think most people. I want to say this as nicely as I can. I think most people just want to turn their brain off and watch people punch each other.
Sure.
Shoot
Yeah,
each other.
everybody loves, the easy entertainment. Entertainment will like the lowest common denominator will always be the most popular. You see that kind of shit on Reddit where, it used to be you'd have all these great in-depth posts and now it's just memes. It's like literal like everything devolves into memes
It's just the internet now.
But the MCU is basically the memes of cinema, It's just the simplest brain dead shit. Like, you don't even need to listen to it. Like, you could just be all, regardless. I don't want to rant about the MCU. The third act of this movie, I think, really starts with when Jake Gyllenhaal enters the home of the triple homicide. This is the linchpin of the entire arc, and we've been seeing the slow inch by inch progression of what he's willing to do. He was moving the body, he was doing a lot of questionable things. This instance, we don't even know this right away because of the way it's cut, but we find that one of the people was alive.
Yeah.
In this house.
You could actually hear him breathing, or like.
Yeah, and. I think there's even on a rewatch there's like a 1 second scene, like this is when after he gets the footage and they fucking hightail it out of there, and Jake Gyllenhaal parks his car, gets out, he says stay here to Rick, and he goes and he starts fidgeting with the footage. You don't quite know what he's doing, but if you watch it, there's like a 1 second scene where you see like the guy like look up and you can sort of see part of his face and head, but it happened so quick that if you didn't know that that's what happened, it would go right past you.
I do want to say real quick about that scene, or two things. One, the way it's shot, really, this is kind of where it clicked for me. I think what the director was trying to do here with this movie. Again, we're essentially viewing the world through Lou Bloom's eyes, and this scene really captures that perfectly because the cameraman does not like as he goes in there with his camera, the actual cameraman of the movie does not show the bodies. You have to actually look down on the little camcorder to see the bodies he's looking at. He goes into the room with the baby, and they don't show the inside of the crib. You just see him like doing this number right here, and looking down. And the whole time, if I remember correctly, there's a couple times this happens. There's like this like uplifting, almost like triumphant music playing. I'm like, okay, so the score even seems to be tied to how he's feeling at that time.
Yeah, I could see that because this is very much like. This is like the birth of Lou Bloom, and this scene is great. Like the way, like when he's like running up the steps and he's like filming the blood that's coming down on the carpeted steps, and it's a curving staircase. He is being a director.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. You can almost imagine like the director of this movie telling him how to act, and I think that's part of why it's so effective is because it's literally a director telling an actor how to act like a director, and he does like this pan of this shot of the shotgun out in front of the house, and he cuts it together, and when he gives it to the news studio, it's like a work of art, It's something that looks so professional and it's so stunning that when they air this, it's a huge ratings boost, and it's a huge story. It's a major story. and it was done perfectly. And of course, we see that there are murderers. They escape. Lou hides that footage, and he sort of begins to hatch his final plan. I think. I don't know how much was intentional. I don't
Oh,
know
I think
specifically.
it all was. I
Like,
think all of it was. Like,
yeah, yeah. I
just
guess
watching it. Yeah.
there's that whole montage where he goes and he isolates the footage of the killers' faces. He takes their license plate and runs it through a DMV check, and he then goes and he stalks these people. And this is when Rick makes his fatal error, and we see another great negotiation scene in where Rick is officially hired on as a full-time employee
He's
from his
the
internship, and
vice president or whatever.
yeah, he gets promoted to assistant vice president. And he's like, wow, that's like, you can even see like his acting is perfect. He's like, that's a lot. That's a big move, and I think it's a perfect demonstration of the character dynamic between the two, because Rick is such a weak negotiator.
Yeah, because
And
he's just
even
like this baby adult, basically. So he doesn't really know exactly what to do in these scenarios.
he puts himself in a lower position. He even downsells himself, where he first offers. He says 100, and then like he's just in such uncharted territory. He says 100, and then he goes
He's like
75. Like, he doesn't even try to negotiate. He downsells his Donald Trump calls that anchoring in the art of the deal, when you oversell your first offer and then you negotiate down to what you actually want.
Well, that whole little scene right there is pretty hilarious, to be honest. Like you were saying, that it sort of points out the dynamic, and I guess I'll loop back around to this just real quick. I think sometime not too long before that scene, they have like this montage of them running around the city getting footage and stuff.
Sure.
And in the crappy car, and then they cut to the nice new Charger, and they're at a gas station, and all of a sudden Rick isn't like all nervous and anxious anymore. He's very sort of laid back, and he's chewing gum, and that is some really clever acting and writing. And then coming back to this scene, the negotiation scene. He's like, okay, you're gonna get promoted to vice president or whatever. He's like, does that come with a raise? Yes, it does. How much? He says,
Pick a number.
Pick a number.
Give me yeah.
And he's like, $75. Good deal. Negotiation closed. He's like, I could have gotten more, couldn't I? Yes.
Yeah, it's incredible. It really shows, who's in power. And that is by a long shot. Lou is the one in power, and the minute his power is challenged, where Rick essentially threatens to cut and leave unless he gets half of the reward. It's a $50,000 reward for information that leads to the arrest of these people who committed this triple homicide, and that's like the most ominous foreshadowing scene where Jake Gylenhaal turns to him and says, well, I'll just have to give it to you, I guess. Something along those lines.
He said, well, if you're going to take my negotiating power, he gives a pause, and he looks at him, he goes, I guess I'll just have to give it to you. And on the second watch, that was impactful. I was like, oh.
Yeah, because you knew what was going to happen. And I think he even rants at some point in the very final part of the movie about, like, you took my power away from me or something. And that's really what it's all about. And I think that's big with like psychopaths, especially of the narcissistic type. They crave power, and even like tiny social interactions, it's all about the power. And a lot of people have accused Trump of that, and it really he probably is a bit of a narcissist. And you can see where, like, even just shaking hands, he like when he pulls people, when every word that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth is a way of increasing his power. And that's a lot like what this character is like. He's literally every action he takes, every word he speaks is about increasing his own power.
And so from here, I guess we kind of get into the, I don't think there's any other scenes I want to talk about off the top of my head, that I can't just say at the end of the thing.
We're at the climax here, and for me, that starts when they tail the two killers to that China. It's like China Palace or something.
It's just some China restaurant.
Great Wall China fast food place.
Whatever. Generic Chinese restaurant.
Yeah, in the middle of Los Angeles with perfect lighting. This is the scene that I remembered as being, because like they're filming into the diner, which is well lit, and I remember the scene as being daylight because everything is so crystal clear and perfectly lit. Mm-hmm. And that might be the second greatest scene in the movie, where he calls the cops and then he says, I gotta go. Like, they're gonna recognize me. And he fucking hangs up on 911, and then he makes Rick get out and film from one angle, and he's filming from the car. And you see the cops arrive, and 2 cops go in, and then like another 2 cops go in, and it's just this rising tension the whole time. And it ends with the shootout, and one of the guys jumps. Like, it's got a bit of some cinematic schlock where the guy literally jumps through a window. Like, that can't happen. Like, nobody is big enough to go run and throw themselves through a window. Okay, it's not going to happen. Yeah, it's never going to happen. Like, unless you've got like spiked shoulder pads, like you're an extra in one of the Mad Max movies. You're not going to you're not going to dive through any type of glass. Okay,
I would say. Just don't try it anyway, because if you do break it, that glass does not break like Hollywood glass. It breaks like real glass, and you might end up spiked on a giant pane of glass.
There was actually some CCTV footage of this guy who was being chased through like a hallway. I want to say it was like a college, and there's a hallway, and like one end is like the block wall, and the other end is just, it's all windows. It's just, nothing but glass, and like the cops chase this guy, and then like there's cops coming the other direction. He's surrounded, and he literally stops, and he goes and he runs into the glass, and he fucking just bounces off and then gets arrested. And it's like, okay, this guy's watched a lot of movies, and I've seen. Did you ever see the clip? It's another CCTV footage where these 2 guys are trying to break into. They're just trying to smash through the glass door of like a gas station, and they take a brick, and he throws the brick, and it bounces off the window. It hits the other guy in the head, and knocks him out, and the guy takes another throw, and he knocks himself out with this brick. He threw this brick as hard as he could into this window, and the brick just bounced off and brains him. Breaking glass is so much more difficult than it looks in movies.
Not all criminals are created equal, I guess.
True, but in this movie, the criminal dives through the glass and he escapes into, with his SUV, and we have a very action-packed chase scene. Surprisingly,
Good. It's really good. The I don't know what the word is, but the car work in this movie is absolutely astounding. It's also astounding. You know what? I think they explained this in the 2 or 3 times he's like, I'm a fast learner, and he's showing all these stats and talking about this and that. Yeah, he probably just learned how to drive good with the internet.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows?
He does, like when the 2 cars, the police car and the suspect's car, both flip, and he just sort of drives through it, then like does like a 180 sort of spin, like something that's very clearly a stunt driver. Yeah. Like, and sure, that could have just been accidental because he's driving. But this is really the final scene. Not really, not the actual final scene of the movie. This is the breaking point of the climax where we've seen Lou. He's been doing a lot of questionable stuff. He lets a guy die at the beginning of the 3rd act. And then here, he actively gets a man killed where he tells Rick, he says, okay, the suspect's dead, come here and film him. I'm going to go film from back here. And he walks back and he films. Mm-hmm. And as Rick approaches the wrecked car, we see that the guy is not dead, and he pulls out his gun and he shoots Rick dead.
Yeah, basically dead. And he gets out of the car, he looks at Lou, and he's just like, I don't know, and he just keeps on. He sees the cops, and they, get shot.
I want to say that the killer who has murdered now 4 or 5, he shot at the cops. He may have killed somebody in the Chinese place. We know that there were dead people in there, but him and his partner were both shooting. He's killed numerous people at this point, and he looks at Lou. Lou's filming him. and then he just turned like they almost share a look. And I want to say again, I might be overanalyzing this, but I want to say that this is the murderer looking at Lou and saying, "Oh, recognizing that they're cut from the same cloth." And he doesn't shoot at Lou, despite the fact that he shot at the other cameraman. And he turns and he has a final shootout with the police, which is it's sort of anticlimactic. And honestly, this sort of is unbelievable as well. Very few people go out shooting. I feel like if this was real life, he would have put his gun down and immediately surrendered, because nobody has a death wish. Even the Boston bomber, who had been shot in the neck and was bleeding out, even he gave himself into police at the end. It's very seldom that there's that final shootout to the death.
I do want to say,
but it's cinema,
quick,
it's film.
Just on that note, dude gets into a final shootout with the cops, and I just hear Rob on the other end of Discord go, "Cool."
Yeah, it was cool. He gets shot a bunch of times. He's like, bang, bang, and like all the cops get out.
Like a little kid. Like a little kid.
Yeah.
It was funny, man.
Yeah, I get why they had that scene and not just have him surrender. Like, the shootout was way more cinematic, despite the fact that it does push credulity a bit. And so he takes this final footage to Nina, and this was probably I love this scene. Like,
the weird intimate scene they have.
I haven't thought about it enough yet, but yeah, I think it is a bit intimate. And she's like, "This is the best film I've ever seen," something like that. And like, she pauses the footage just as Rick is dying and looking into the camera, and the camera is focused on that death stare during that entire scene where they're talking back and forth. And it feels very accusatory from the dead man. And it's like, okay, like, yeah, both of these people are conspiring together. And did you notice that, where they have the freeze frame of him dead? That is a screen we should have screenshotted for the podcast, because the framing of that scene was just so perfect.
I guess on a note with that one, we sort of agreed that maybe this one wasn't something we necessarily had to get screenshots for because of the kind of movie it is. There's not really any like crazy things to show you, So
we're not commenting on the look and feel of like an alien monster or like some sort of special. There's really very little special effects in this movie, maybe none at all.
I don't think there are any.
I don't think the only scenes really that it would even have something like that would be maybe the fire scene. Like there's some shit on fire at a couple moments.
Well, the budget was 8.5 mil. So I could definitely
That's incredible that they made one of the best honestly, when I saw this, I said, this is the movie of the year for 2014. I might have seen it 2014. I think it came out like November 2014, and I maybe saw it in this like the first half of 2015. But I was like, fuck, that's the best movie of the entire year. And they made that on an $8 million budget, where we've got this shit that's just, The Matrix was what, $200 million?
I'm not sure. I know
The Matrix Resurrections was something like $230 million, $200 million. And it looks like ass. It's acted like ass. The writing is trash for most of it.
Sorry, you're talking about the newest one.
The Matrix Resurrections.
Okay. I was about to say, wait, what?
Oh God, it's so infuriating. It's so infuriating to see the trend of movies, especially with like the CGI clusterfucks of all the Marvel movies. And it's not even that I hate movies that are made or that have a lot of CGI, because I will defend Avatar 2009 to my last breath. That film is a work of art.
Just for comparison, the best films of that year in drama were Boyhood. Never heard of that one.
Trash. That's the movie that was filmed over 13 years and literally used the same kid as he actually aged.
I didn't know that.
Which, admittedly, like that's a pretty great feat.
That seems.
And I respect.
It seems unnecessary.
It's a gimmick. I mean, it's a fucking gimmick. Yeah. But I respect the dedication it took to make a movie over 13 years.
I respect that, but I mean.
What are the other movies that year?
Musical or comedy, Grand Budapest Hotel. That's a Wes Anderson
Fucking
thing.
that's Wes Anderson trash. I don't respect it.
And
I
the
don't know.
other one,
I've
the
never
other
seen
one,
any of his movies.
the last one is one I think maybe we should check out because I've always wanted to check it out. Birdman.
Birdman's okay. I like Birdman for its technical achievement. The whole film is structured as though it's a single cut, and I've always been a huge fan of long cuts. I can't remember the director's name, but he did Children of Men, and I believe he also did Gravity, which is
really?
a pretty. I could be wrong because there's two directors that their last name begins with A, and I always mix up their movies. I know like Fountain isn't one of them, but I love long cuts. The opening scene of Gravity is like a 14-minute cut. The Children of Men has like 3 very well-known long cut scenes, and Birdman is all one. You know, it's stylized to look like one cut, even though it does take place over several days. I think I could be wrong, but that wouldn't be a bad movie to talk about. We've pretty much covered all of.
Long story short, he gets investigated. He finagles his way out of it with his Lou Bloom charm, and it cuts to a scene where he has I think 2 vans, and there's like 4.
3. I think he's got 3 vans, and he's got five interns, and they all split off. And son of a bitch, I can't remember the final line of this movie.
He says, you know, welcome to this great opportunity. He says, I wouldn't ask you to do anything that I wouldn't do.
Yes, that's the final line of the movie, and it's like, knowing what this man is willing to do, that's not a reassuring line at all, because he's literally willing to do anything. Right. And admittedly, that is one of the markers for success. If you are willing to do what it takes to succeed, like obviously the person, and I mean, I don't want to get political and like start ranting about Zoomers, but yeah, being willing to flip burgers for 18 months while you're in, between 16 and 18, that is one of the markers for success. Somebody who's willing to do that is going to go farther in life than somebody who is not willing to do menial labor when they have no skills and education or experience. And that cuts back to when he's interviewing Rick, and Rick's like, I did a week here, a week there. Like, he wasn't willing at that point in his life to do anything worth doing, succeeding, and that's why he hadn't succeeded yet. He was living in somebody's car. I'll tell you what was another thing that I noticed. This is just an aside. But just to show you the strength of the writing in this movie, at the very beginning, we're establishing so much about Lou Bloom when he's talking to the scrapyard manager, and he says, I worked at a garage at one point. And it's like, okay, people who work at garages, that's a tough job, being a grease monkey. Yeah. But that establishes why he was able to go in and sort of tamper with the other newsie's car so that it, the brakes fail. That really goes a long way of like showing how he knows to get scrap, and like it seems adjacent.
And what you're saying here,
he talks about cars.
I was just gonna say, this is one of the notes I took. They go to pretty great lengths to show visually what he does to save money, because he doesn't have much money, if any.
Explain that to me, because I didn't catch anything. I didn't catch him being frugal.
So he's not like machinist skinny in this movie, but he's pretty skinny, so he clearly doesn't eat a lot. You can assume that anyway. One of the first things, I don't know if this is on purpose or not, but one of the first things you see is a Bird's Eye commercial, which is like these vegetable bags are really cheap. You see that commercial a couple times, but like on his TV, on his TV, that was like the first thing that you saw. There's a scene in his apartment where he just kind of has the TV on casually. He's waiting for the morning news to see what this other guy had done. He wants to see the effect of this. Mm-hmm. And he's sewing some clothes together. There was something else that he was doing.
I remember him ironing at one point.
Yeah, well,
I didn't
just...
catch him as sewing clothes.
Yeah, he's literally like by hand just sewing like pants or something together.
Damn, that's something that I have to keep in mind when I rewatch this film, because I'm sure I will get. This is such a great movie. It's worth watching numerous times, I would say.
Yeah, I could easily watch it a couple more times before I'm dead.
I wouldn't ask you to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself. Like, what a great final scene.
It's amazing.
And even at the end of the movie, during the credit rolls, it's just a nighttime shot of LA. You see the moon, and the whole time you just hear like radio chatter, because he's always got the police scanner on, and you hear like the sounds of the city. Man, fan fucking tastic across the board.
So I'm gonna give this movie the best rating that I'll probably give any movie, which is a 9.5.
I mean, I'll give it a 10. Like, obviously, I mean, like, I'm saying this in a large part because some of the other movies I've given, like, 7s and 8s to that don't compare to this movie at all.
No. This is probably the best movie we've covered.
This is easily in the best movies of all time. If I had to make a list of 50 movies, and out of the hundreds and hundreds of movies I've seen, easily in the best top 50. It's hard. Like, I used to keep a running list of like, these are my top 3. These are like my top 10 movies. This would probably be in the top 10 even. It's a flawless execution. If you like the movie Joker, this is a movie that would probably appeal to you. It's a character movie. It is a look into someone who is so drastically different from most people you will ever meet.
And most character movies, from my experience, they don't really tend to be that entertaining or that interesting.
Sure, it takes a very strong script, and it takes very strong facets of filmmaking outside of action, by which I mean, the sound design, the cinematography, things like that, which you have to sort of bring in because the movie is just about this character. There's no, like, mystery plot that they're following, so, you don't have anything like that. You don't have any, like, reveals, stuff like that. You don't have any... I mean, you do have action, which is great because a movie, action can be great. Yeah, action can be great and can add a lot to the movie, and this makes very use of the limited action in the film. One last thing that I want to say, I think this, because this is we're going to compare this to a very well-known movie, and I think that for people who may be on the fence, this might be the deciding factor. You had said you would have liked to have seen a sequel to this movie.
No,
and I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. You're left wondering what happened to these characters. You want to know more of this. That's how invested you are in this character, which is saying a lot. And normally you only see this kind of stuff, this kind of sentiment with books. Like Stephen King writes about how so many people have written them knowing, like, where's such and such now? How are they doing? Like, as though he gets letters from them. But you had said that you had... expressed interest in knowing where this character is later, and I said that if you were to have a sequel to, like, there already is a sequel to this movie, and it's American Psycho. That Patrick Bateman in American Psycho is where this character ends up in his, like, middle age. Like, Lou Bloom is a young up and coming psychopath. American Psycho is an established, successful psychopath.
Yeah, I don't know if they ever actually say how old he is, to be honest. But
Lou Bloom?
He's at least
sure.
30.
Yeah, you gotta just go. You just gotta go. Like, where he is. He's got a single room apartment. But yeah, that's the sequel to this movie, is American Psycho, and I can really see this guy, because eventually, he's gonna want more. He's gonna have a new studio. He's gonna be one of the top. And at that point, then what does he do? Does he start killing people? I mean, he's already he's letting people die by really he probably could be charged for
I think
murder
I
in
think I
like
see
the
what you're
third,
saying.
like in some degree of murder, not for he's not like he's not taking
Like third degree
a
or
nail
something.
gun to the back of anyone's head,
Yeah.
but I could definitely see that being in his future. And again, this is the main character of the movie. What a great! It's just a great story.
Would you?
I don't have anything to add.
Yeah, I'd say would you call that last thoughts? I guess so. Yeah, I can't really say much more. I mean, we kind of talked it out, to be honest. There's so much to say about the movie. It's one way you can really tell that it's a great movie. This wasn't one that either of us had qualms about being able to sit and ramble on about for about an hour and 5 minutes.
We
now.
did not plan a double feature for discussing. Maybe next week we should talk about some less intricate movies, maybe, or it was simpler.
Yeah, we didn't even need pictures. That's how good this
We didn't
movie
even need
is.
pictures. Just two dudes discussing a very good movie. And I hope, I hope if anyone watches this, this is a great movie to talk about on our first official episode of ColleidoCast. So hopefully someone will listen to this. I don't know. I don't give a shit. I'm done. It's 8:00. I don't want to say anything more.
Where can people find you? Plug
I
whatever
don't
you
know.
want. This and that.
I don't know. Whatever. Follow me. I'm on Twitter. Come to our Discord. Figure it out for yourself.
Just Google War and Whiskey.
I'm
and
War. Yeah.
As always, you can find me on all the social media things.
All the social media. Follow this guy. If you want to find me, follow JTFM.
Pretty much, yeah. Follow me if you want to find this guy. Yeah, at JTFM, Twitter, Getter, unfortunately, all the things. And yeah, I guess we will be back hopefully same time next week, depending on how things go for me at work. But anyway, as always, take care.